Woot woot. Check, check.
Welcome to the Marquette Wire Town Hall Forum in Weisler Auditorium. Tonight, we will explore ways we can make our community better together. This is Finding Home.
Welcome, and thank you for coming to Finding Home, a Marquette Wire Town Hall Forum. I'm your host, Alex Rivera-Grant, and together we are going to walk through what makes this campus home. We will talk about issues such as mental health and homelessness with members of the Marquette and Milwaukee community. At the end of the forum, there will be a Q&A session where you all will get to join the conversation. But first, we are going to start by taking a look at what makes this campus home for students across campus.
What makes it feel like home?
One word?
Probably.
All that in one word.
Welcoming?
Fun.
Uplifting.
Welcoming. Open-hearted.
Family.
Privilege.
Friendship. Supportive. Wholesome.
Super, like friendly, like nice.
Community.
I'd probably say family.
Embracing, I would say.
Community, I guess.
Hospitable.
Wholesome.
Family.
Friends.
Family. Family.
Comfortable.
Community.
Probably a diamond. Yeah, because like if you think about it, it's like you have to put a lot of work and there's a lot of pressure to do well, but like in the end you meet really great people and you're like exposed to great opportunities.
One issue that affects our campus as well as the Milwaukee community is homelessness. So now we're going to talk with a man who's experienced homelessness firsthand, as well as the man who helped him find housing. We'll also be talking with the Marquette Jesuit to talk about the campus's mission. So sitting here with me is Jeff Stingley, Luke Rosnick, and Father Chris Krull. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We truly appreciate you guys coming out. So Jeff, I am going to start with you. Could you just tell us about your experience with homelessness?
My experience with homelessness started about 8 years ago when I was working, ended up injuring my back. Couldn't end up paying the bills or nothing like that. So I ended up going to shelters, the mission, and finally got tired of the mission. Went and slept out in the parks, over at Carver Park where I grew up at. And from there, everything was okay at the park. So, because basically the people that came to the park, I grew up with. So I didn't have no problems over there. So I just couldn't deal with the mission at the time.
Mm-hmm. And then I know that you received help through Housing First. Could you tell us kind of how you found out about it?
I went to repairs at a breach and talked to a lady named Mary Ann Patty that worked with community advocates. And from there, I told her my story and everything about my whole background from growing up and everything. And from there, we talked to Natalia Tofree over at Housing First, and that's when a week later me and her went and started looking for a place, and I ended up getting a place on 28th and Highland. And when I was there, excuse me, I didn't know how long the program was, so basically they furnished the couch, bed, pots and pans and everything, but I still wasn't putting nothing else up in there because I wasn't trying to gather a bunch of stuff and then have to end up moving out and have to take that stuff with me. So for a whole year, that's how it was until they said, no, put some stuff on the walls and this and that. And I still ain't put nothing on the walls or nothing. So I just keep it plain and simple for me.
Yeah. And what was that first night like?
The first night in the place, I didn't have nothing there. I had a sleeping bag, a blanket and stuff, so I ended up sleeping on the floor. I got some pots and pans from a friend, and I had money on the Quest card, so I ended up buying some food and stuff, and I cooked me a meal there and stuff, because that's something I did in the past, cook and stuff too. So other than that, it went okay. I was satisfied. Well, now I wasn't sleeping outside, because it was fall time and it started getting cold, so it worked out perfect for me then.
And then Luke, you are from Housing First, so could you just tell us a little bit about what you do there?
Yeah, well, we're in the Department of Health and Human Services in the county. It's the housing division. So our team is pretty small. I'm basically the research person. Program evaluator is my title. But we do all sorts of things. It's not that it's a small part of my job at this point. We met Jeff, and Jeff kind of joined our program right at the beginning in the end of 2015. The first people moved in August of 2015. So all these years, we do homeless outreach, street outreach. We go out every day to all the different parts of the county to find people living on the street and get them off the street. Big part of my job is the efficacy of these programs and how Housing First is the way to address homelessness. It is not only more economically sound, but it gets results faster and it's more profound results. We can talk about that if you want to. But most of the team are social workers. My boss is a social worker, and everybody else, they're mental health professionals mostly, and able to assess and get people to the next step right away. And I can go on and on about all this stuff, so I'll let you guide my talking.
All right.
Yeah.
And then I know that you are also on the advisory board at Housing First, so could you just talk about like that and what you do that?
Well, on that advisory board, I'm one of the people that since I'm in housing, is to let them know ways that they can make it more better, make it more efficient and stuff. So by me telling them my problems, what's going on in the housing with the management, or what they need to do to make it run smoother, that's what I do. And besides that, being on the advisory board, I do like this, speaking engagements. I went to Madison, talked to Leela Taylor and them. The Police Academy, I did a speaking engagement at. I did a documentary. So, and I'm on the COC board that helps delegate money from HUD to shelters and stuff too now. So everything I do right now with the advisory board is my way of giving back something that I want to do to help other homeless people too then.
Yeah,
so
Jeff was integral, like it wouldn't exist if it weren't for Jeff like starting it and sort of being, he and a few other guys in our housing program. That's something else I wanted to say for your first question. A big part of our role too is that we have permanent supportive housing programs. So we do street outreach and try to connect people with government assistance, but that is a ongoing thing where they get connected to services that fit with their needs and what they're asking for. An apartment, of course, but then you get a person to come visit you at that apartment to find out what the next step is and build a relationship with you. So while we're all kind of doing our jobs at our office, a few folks from the programs, they want to see how they can help. Like Jeff said, he wanted to like give back, wasn't really to the place yet of wanting to be even being able to physically like go get a job again, right? But a couple times a week, like, what do you need? I can help you at the office. And that's a lot of what Marquette does with us too. Midnight Run partners with us, and they come, and our office is much cleaner when their semester is in, because it's just chaotic sometimes with how busy everyone is, and they help keep us in order. But when they've been volunteering together, they've talked, and they talked about how, and I'll make my next response to your question very short because I'm kind of getting to some other stuff I can talk about. But this like advisory committee, it started very small, just as a few people in our Housing First program talking about how it could be better and their experience going through homeless services in our community. Everybody's experience is unique because people are dealing with different issues. But I've never been homeless before. And most committees and boards and top-level decision makers about the funding that goes to homelessness, most people on those boards have never experienced homelessness either. Sometimes there's a person, like a little member, but this sort of movement that this small group that was just volunteering in our office has become a community-wide thing. It's no longer just our program, and Jeff and a few other folks are continuum of care, which I won't get into all the details, we can maybe, but it's where all federal funding for homelessness comes into our county. Anyone that gets that funding is a part of the continuum of care. Well, now this advisory board made up of 100% people with lived experience of homelessness. They vote on policy. They sit on, like Jeff's position, sitting on the board of directors of the whole COC. So this is, the entire federal budget for homelessness in our community. Their board now has equal voting power to the provider advisory committee that informs the board on their decision making. And that just happened in the last few months. So people don't know about it yet because they're now sort of revealing themselves and influencing our decision making. But the reason Housing First has been able to sort of adjust to our community changing over the last few years is because we have the input of our board and Jeff and the other people on it telling us what's happening in their programs, because we don't live in their apartments, we don't stay at the shelters, we're not on the street except for when we're working. So they're experts more than people that maybe go to school their whole lives to learn about homelessness because they've experienced it. Yeah.
And I know you touched a little bit about like Midnight Run and the things that Marquette does with you. So I wanted to ask like Father Kroll, because you like kind of go more into depth about how Marquette as a Jesuit institution kind of helps with homelessness and all things like that.
Yeah, I guess there's so many opportunities that happen here in terms of the campus ministry, the offerings from the Midnight Run to then even looking nationally in terms of the MAP programs, the Marquette in Action programs where you can take a spring break trip and go off, or even international, the IMAP. But I guess the fundamental core of like why we do this is important. I mean, the sense of the mission of Marquette is, yeah, the sense of like service and excellence and of giving back in some way. But I think it's exactly what Jeff was saying, is like to give back. And most of us here at Marquette we come with such privilege, and we come with so many blessings. And I mean, the fundamental core of being a Catholic Jesuit institution is like we're living off the scripture of Jesus Christ. And it's, I mean, someone who was born poor, died a criminal, had none of his own housing, and yet he transformed the world. And teaching us about what love is, about this unconditional giving of oneself for the sake of another person. And so the core values of Marquette are the core values of Christianity, and the fundamental aspect of a God who pours himself into creation, creates human beings out of the image and likeness of God, which then gives them a fundamental dignity, value, and worth, and then to care for each other. The one thing we have to do is to love each other. And so we can get so caught up in like all the busyness of our lives and all of our work, but there's this classic scriptural account of Matthew 25, and it's where kind of the God is looking at everybody's life at the end of time, and is like, where were you when I was hungry? Where were you when I was thirsty, or naked, or in prison, or ill? And those who were drawn into the kingdom, who showed some kind of love, is like when you gave to the least, in terms of poor, and if you gave money to the poor, if you gave clothing to the naked, if you gave food to the hungry, drink to the thirsty, it's like there was a sense of absolute love. It's like whenever you give the least of humanity, you're given to Jesus Christ himself. And so we believe in a God who is love, and who only really knows love. And so when, in the end, I guess this is kind of looking at the end of times, and it's like, how have you used your time on earth? How have we lived our life? And have we given back, as Jeff is doing, is what we're talking about. It's like, how have we given back? How have we shown some kind of love? Well, we have an account for that. And it's like, well, will God look at us and see any kind of love within us? And have we given to the poor in concrete and real ways and gotten involved? And the hope is, when you come out of Marquette, that you have learned some kind of value in that way. That you learn, it's like, that you've been blessed, we've all been blessed, and so what are we going to do, and how can we give back?
Mm-hmm. And then what specific things can students on campus do to kind of like help things like Housing First or other programs out there? Like, what specific things can they do?
Well, it seems like, yeah, they can get involved in, different, either internships, come to your organization, do things like Midnight Run. Mm-hmm. Even, I know like Jesu offers like a Saturday evening meal program. And just, it seems like the idea of forming relationships, of forming these bonds, and getting to know that it's like, we're in this city, that there's people across the street who are struggling to find home, struggling to find a meal to eat, and so we can be easily going to our dining halls and things and have everything we want, but it's like we don't have to go far to do this service or think that there's someplace around the world to get involved. It's like there's service opportunities right across the street, right here, and so yeah, whether it be campus ministry, there's to to these meal programs, to different things. And it's like, but even it seems like so many of our clubs on campus is about service, or even the sororities and fraternities are about service kind of things. And it's like, and it's the care of humanity. It's the care for each other. It's what we are as human beings.
And then kind of opening up on that, what do you think, like, people, this is for all of you, what do you think people in the Milwaukee community as a whole, or even other communities, can really do to kind of just, like, help? Because I feel like there is some sort of, like, stigma that does block a lot of people from helping. And what do you think that we can do to kind of change that and offer these people help? And anybody can start.
Well, let me see. Some people that's from out of Milwaukee County, they can, which they already do a lot too, is like St. Ben's, they different church organizations and stuff like that. They volunteer at Ben's. They come down there with the meals cooked already, which has got to be warmed up. Or they can donate, you know, socks, T-shirts, toiletries and stuff to Housing First or other places and stuff that'll help out. During the summertime, don't give out tents, please. That's my preference. You know, don't give them out, because right now we got a bunch of them down there we got to throw away anyway. Feeding, hey, I ain't have no problem, because there's always meal programs here. A person say they hungry in Milwaukee, don't believe them. There's too many meal sites for them not to be hungry. What else? Other than that, I just say just volunteer somewhere. That's it.
I think the major thing, if there's ever one thing, it's an idea, but then it leads to action, is something I never understood going to grad school for psychology and for public health, and now working in the government and working for a number of years in this field. A lot of us don't know this. I learned it on my own, right? That of people in America, so let's think of 100% of the people that would qualify for housing assistance. So you have to be low income. There's a certain federal guideline for that. Housing is a huge part of your the expense in your life, right? There's so many things that go wrong if you don't have housing stability, health, mental health. I mean, it can go on forever. Your family's stability, children having to live apart from the unit, which then instills trauma. There's a lot of things that cascade. But the number one thing that I want to get to is that if you take, again, 100% of the people that we would say qualify for that assistance, only 20 to 25% of Americans will ever actually get access to it because it's not offered. Right? We don't have it. I'm saying a number, like, you can qualify for it, but there's a lottery. So if you don't get the assistance, you're on a wait list. And that's even if you have the wherewithal, the ability to get to understanding that there's a wait list to get on, right? So when we talk about someone who's born with disabilities, experiences significant trauma in their lifetime, maybe was taken care of by their family, and then that family goes away. They maybe can't read. I mean, there's a lot of, like, when we're talking about the homeless population, and certainly the chronically homeless population, and the people that we've been working with our program, so the average age is 58, and the average length of time homeless is longer than 8 years. When we first started, we were finding people on the street that were 20, 25 years, 15 years homeless and in their 60s, right? This was 5 years ago. Now, Milwaukee looks very different because of this chronic homeless initiative. But that first stat I'm telling you about, you can look this up. I can share some links if you want to kind of share it out on the videos. Mm-hmm. But what that means is that there's 75% of people living in poverty that would qualify for this government assistance. They're just out there, and it's just not there for them. So here in Milwaukee, to address some of these issues, we prioritize this funding to the people who have been homeless the longest, have the highest vulnerability scales, so you're elderly, disabled, pregnant, have children, things like that. You'll qualify earlier, so that people with that's kind of the only way to do it. And then when there's these other groups that don't qualify, we need to have the community support. We need to have private funding. Corporations will do it, but we have links on our website for, like, for example, that federal funding that people qualify for. It's not an application fee to fill out an application. You got to come up with that money on your own. You got to get a security deposit on your own. They'll pay for rent assistance once you're through all your paperwork. We need extra funding for that kind of stuff, or the government does not fund it.
Yeah. And I'm sorry to have to cut you off, and I'm sorry you didn't get to respond. But unfortunately, that is all the time that we have for this segment. So thank you so much for sharing all of these experiences, thoughts, and beliefs. I truly appreciate you guys coming out tonight. And now we have a student from the Live Poets Society who will be performing a piece of work by Chiara Bellino. So please welcome Meggie Calmendi to the stage.
Home is much more than having a roof over your head or material items. It's something that you know you can come back to. I didn't really understand why my family was deemed so different from most when I was younger. In reality, I hadn't even realized it was a thing. You would think maybe I would start to grasp the concept when I had to choose between Uncle Mike, Uncle Scott, Marlon, and Robert, all as potential bachelors to the kindergarten daddy-daughter dance. I continued to brush the idea aside even when we started to receive field trip permission slips that my teachers would say Mommy and Daddy had to sign. I would ask if it's okay if just my mom signed it. Of course, that was fine. I was just a bit confused. I started to understand a little bit more when I began to have play dates. My friends wanted me to stay longer, or they wanted to use a certain electronic. Mom would say no. So they would say, it's okay, I'll just ask my dad. This didn't really pose a problem to me, except for the fact that I felt very cheated. How could they get to have two chances at getting what they want, and I only got one? For 12 years, it was an unspoken fact that my father was not around. I didn't really question it, I kind of just understood. I didn't need anyone else but my mom anyways. She gave me everything I could have ever wanted. A best friend that couldn't block me on social media when we fought, an at-home therapist with around-the-clock hours, and someone who was never and will never give up on me. When I was finally told the whole story, I looked at my mom, who was conveniently in the middle of smoking a cigarette, and told her how much I loved her, and how much neither of us never had and never would need him. The bond between a mother who loves her daughter more than anything and a daughter who needs her mom more than anyone is absolutely unbreakable. My mother is my rock, she is my safe space. No matter what distance is put between us, she is my #1 fan and my #1 supporter. She is my best friend through thick and thin, and she is the reason that I am happy, healthy, and a thriving young woman. She gives me another reason to hope, dream, breathe, and live my life to the fullest every single day. No matter how far she is my home. As long as I have her, I'm home.
Thank you so much, Meggie, for sharing that with us. We truly appreciate it. So now we have two women here with us. So we have Debbie Contreras. She is a Marquette counselor, and she's going to be telling us about the on-campus resources for mental health support. And she's joined by Megan Rittler, who is going to share with us her beliefs and experiences with mental health. So hello, thank you so much for coming onto the forum. We truly appreciate you guys taking the time to come and be here tonight. So I am going to start with you, Debbie. Could you kind of just tell me the benefits of going to counseling, either specifically at Marquette or just outside?
Okay, well, obviously lots of benefits to coming to counseling. They depending on what the issue is that the person is coming with, but a lot of times, even if you have a great support system outside, the benefit is talking to somebody who doesn't know you, who doesn't necessarily know what's going on, so you can have a very non-judgmental and independent kind of opinion on what you're bringing to the relationship objective, to gain support with what one is dealing with, to learn skills to improve functioning. Again, that can be academic functioning, that can be social functioning, and then just overall health functioning in terms of one's mental health. I think a big one I see a lot here on campus is self-esteem, self-confidence. You can gain a lot of skills in improving that. And then again, depending upon where somebody is coming from and what they've experienced and been through, kind of working through those past difficulties if there's been maybe abuse situations or, oppression, discrimination type things. Those are just a few.
Thank you. And then moving on to Megan, could you kind of just share your personal experience?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression early on in high school. And when I learned about these things, I hadn't known much about them at all. So I was tasked with researching and figuring out all of this on my own. And then I started seeing a counselor and was able to understand further the feelings and the things that I was doing because of my mental illness, and not just different quirks about myself, but that it was behind that.
And then this is kind of a question for both of you. What do you think the most important things to look for when you are dealing with someone who could be going through something and they just haven't said anything, or they don't even know themselves, or even if it's like you're the one who's struggling with it?
Yeah.
I would say overall just changes in behavior. If someone's acting in any way that's not usually like themselves, it's an easier way for them to be able to identify that they're struggling and they're not truly acting in their character.
Yeah, it's a good point, especially on campus when a lot of times the people around you are not necessarily your family members, maybe if you're living on campus. If you're noticing a friend who just all of a sudden they're not hanging out as much, or their mood seems to be very different, or sad or down, or they're all of a sudden acting uncharacteristically different, in terms of maybe drinking more or sleeping a lot more, things like that. Kind of pointing that out and saying, are you okay? Is everything all right? And again, just as you said, pointing out those feelings in yourself too. Like, I'm just not feeling right. I'm not quite sure what's going on. Because physical and mental health are equally as important. A lot of times we forget about mental health and we focus on our physical health, but both are extremely important.
And then this one is for you, Debbie. Why do you think so many people ignore their mental health and kind of just push it off and just be like, well, today's just an off day for me, I'll be fine tomorrow, and then it just keeps happening? Why do you think most people do that?
Well, I think it's a little bit easier to ignore. I mean, if you break your leg, you're not going to be able to walk on it, and you have to kind of do something to address that, right? It's a little bit easier to fake it until you make it, I guess, in some ways. Sometimes you can try to push it down until, unfortunately, I sometimes liken it to a teapot, right? If you're boiling water, eventually it's going to reach that breaking point, and you can only, ignore it and avoid it for so long until it's screaming, please help me and, get through this.
And then I know you are an advocate for mental health, Megan, so can you kind of just explain, one, how you got into that, and then what you kind of are doing now?
So I began advocating for mental health after losing my brother. A lot of my family have joined me in this advocacy, so we've all been advocating through different organizations and different projects, as well as just starting conversations with people when we can. Starting any conversations with classmates and things like that is easy ways to just get the ball rolling and start talking about mental health.
And then what do you think that everybody should know about mental health, regardless of just what kind it is or who's struggling with it?
Well, it's important. Everybody has mental health. Everybody struggles. Life is difficult. Everybody goes through something. And so it's definitely not a sign of weakness. Mm-hmm. It's a sign of strength when you recognize that something is going on with you and to seek, help with that. And I think that's why the benefits of a college counseling center, coming to a college counseling center, is so important, because it actually lends itself so nicely. It's right here on campus. You don't have to use insurance benefits. You don't have to find time outside of work and dealing with that to get there. It's just kind of, you can add it to your day. So I think that's kind of an important benefit of, seeking mental health services now when you're, on campus and have that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely think being able to seek these services that they're having offered, and being able to practice your mental health and realize that some days are harder than others, and realize different self-care things that you can do and different ways that you can let your family and your friends know that you need a little extra boost, and have that support within your community.
Mm-hmm. And this is for both of you to answer as well. What do you think people should do for those who kind of are a little more reserved, don't really want to talk about their mental health, and aren't like really comfortable maybe going to the counseling center or even telling like close friends? Like, what do you recommend you would do to help someone like that?
Well, I'd say just providing support and encouragement. Over at the counseling center, we have a therapy dog called Koo. So sometimes that's the inn. People come to visit and pet the dog. He's a big Great White Pyrenees and fluffy. And sometimes then people kind of check out the environment and say, okay, this doesn't seem as scary as I thought it might be. They see other people kind of coming and going and say, okay, maybe this is something I might be able to do. We try to provide outreach to as many different organizations and campus departments. So, I think encouraging, maybe inviting a friend to come with you to, maybe a talk on something like this. That might maybe get that little bit, those thoughts going that this is something I could do or I could see myself doing, and maybe even offering to go with them. Maybe not sitting in the office with them unless they want you to, but just helping them make the appointment, accompanying them, etc. So I think just not giving up. Because I think a lot of time is, well, I've tried, I can't do any more, and then that actually kind of alienates that person even further from what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would definitely say if you recognize that someone is struggling, to try and just be very persistent with them and try and make sure that you're continuously asking them how they're doing and figuring out different ways that you can help them, because not everyone thinks that counseling is the right way for them to go. There's all different ways that people can find peace in their mental illness, but they need to be able to work through the different choices that are available.
And then this is one specifically for you, Debbie. What do you kind of do, like, for those who, it's not necessarily that they're reserved, but their culture is just, they've always been raised and conditioned to just, like, kind of ignore their mental health, and, like, mental health really isn't, like, they've been told their whole life mental health isn't something that's real for you, like, that's not something that you go through. What do you kind of do in those situations?
Well, we meet students where they're at. And the students' goals are what we work on. So it's very open-ended in that way. And having those open conversations with people, what does that mean to you? What messages have you received about it? And then just having those conversations and working as slowly or as quickly as one wants to. And I think just through those conversations, things come out, and then the goal, the mutually agreed upon goals are available to be, kind of identified, and that's where the relationship starts.
Mm-hmm. And then kind of going off of that as well, I know that last year there were some petitions for the counseling center to have more counselors kind of like of color for certain cultures. What has Marquette really done about those particular concerns from the students?
Well, I mean, we have some diversity on staff. We'd love to have representation for every as much representation as we have in the student body, which of course we're working on as well. But in terms of the therapists that we have, it's something we're always working on, being sensitive to any student that walks in the door. So, again, it's impossible to match every single identity of every client that walks in. So we're constantly, as a staff, working on, just being aware and sensitive to be able to meet the needs of any of those students. We have our bios up on the website. Students can ask for certain identities as that they may match with. Like for example, I'm bilingual. We have a lot of first generation, those sorts of things. So if they want those matches, as much as we can, we're able to match that way. And I think it's something that the counseling center knows and is striving towards, but we'd love to have all identities represented.
Thank you. And then this is for both of you as well, because you as a counselor, obviously working with the students, and you as a college student, what do you think the most common concerns people have with mental health? What are the things that college students in particular go through?
Well, I actually looked this one up because so our top 5, based on the last year's data, from the students that we saw, the top 5 were anxiety. So 74% of our students came in listing anxiety as one of their chief complaints. Depression was 56%, kind of self-esteem, self-confidence issues were 31%, academic concerns 28%, and relationship difficulties 25%. And I think that's pretty standard kind of across the country. And of course there are others. A big one we see, especially first semester, for a lot of first-year students, but not necessarily just first-year students, is adjustment, like adjustment to college and the university. We have substance abuse concerns, eating concerns, self-injury, self-harm concerns, identity issues, sexual assault issues, oppression, discrimination. Those are kind of our top ones that we work with.
Mainly on campus, I've noticed many people will have had mental health support in the past, but once they move to campus, they don't continue that support, or they think they don't need it anymore, or any of those options. And so I think the main thing is making sure that people continue to prioritize their mental health and continue to find ways to practice good mental health and be able to talk about it and work through it with others.
And so we talked a lot about like the benefits of counseling and like going to counseling and a lot of the issues that people face. What are some specifics on maybe just like how they get help or the services that are offered at Marquette?
Yeah, so we're located on campus. We're over in Holthusen Hall, which is right next to the Varsity Theater building. We are open and available for all full-time Marquette students and actually MyEd students as well. We have a contract with MyEd. If you're not full-time, you still can come in and we help you kind of get connected to somebody in the community. You can call and make an appointment, 288-7172, or you can stop in as well anytime we're open, which is 8 to 4:30. They'll ask you some basic identifying information, and again, ask if there's a specific counselor that you'd like to work with. And then you get your appointment time that works best with your schedule. Yeah, and then we also have on-call hours, so if there's ever a crisis, we have somebody available at all hours of the regular workday, and then we have after hours on-call that you can access through actually calling MUPD. They can access the counselor on call and help address any more imminent concerns that are where somebody can't wait for an actual appointment time.
And then I know that you had mentioned there's some, and you had as well, some people don't necessarily like going to counseling and don't really feel like it's a fit for them. So what other ways would you recommend for someone to kind of just like take care of themselves mentally without maybe going to counseling?
I've realized that many people on our campus especially, they're Christian or Catholic, and they do not want to just go to a counselor, but they would like to go to someone who shares the same faith as them. So I think a big part of our campus is we have many Jesuits on our campus, and many students are able to go and talk with these Jesuits and work through the feelings that they're having and the different issues that they're facing, and have that faith tied in with it as well.
Yeah, and I think those basics of taking care of yourself, getting enough sleep, kind of a balanced appetite or balanced diet, balanced appetites, exercise, right? Balancing that time that one spends on their academics, but also with some social time, making sure it's a good balance and not too much study break and not enough studying time. Doing a lot of those like mindfulness activities that are out there now. There's so many apps out there on your breathing, kind of relaxation, stress relief, those sorts of things. I think can also just help kind of minimize the symptoms and work help take care of what's ever going on.
And what do you think the biggest kind of like negative triggers are for college students that kind of maybe like either spark up new things that hadn't been in their mind before or bring back old stuff?
Well, that's kind of a loaded question. I mean, some people get triggered by specific things depending on any trauma or certain situations they may have been through. I think we'll be seeing a lot in the next couple of weeks, right after Thanksgiving, when obviously it's the last week of class and finals. I mean, everything just seems to pile on, and that's a high stress period for basically everybody walking around. campus. So I think, especially if they let those things that I just spoke about in the last question go in terms of, okay, I'm not really getting enough sleep, and I'm skipping meals because I feel I have to study, and I've stopped working out because I don't have time. One's not taking care of themselves. I think that's just prime territory for all the symptoms and just stress in general to rear its ugly head.
I think the majority of the time it's the transition as well. So moving on to campus and not having family and friends around and all of that, and just starting in a new place and starting over can also be a big trigger for people, and just the change of environment and change of pace. I know college classes are very different than high school, and moving forward and just figuring out their future path can also be a hard part of it.
Mm-hmm. And then kind of for both of you, what are the biggest things that you do kind of just like for self-care, especially mentally, or even just any other way?
Well, spending time with my family and my kids, going to their activities. I was probably one of the best participants in the MU Massageathon. I went there several times throughout the past few weeks. Great value. Any PT people here? Yeah, just spending time with family, doing some, hang out with friends, just kind of doing some of those things where I can decompress and get away from the work sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say family and friends as well, but also being able to involve myself in different activities that are near and dear to my heart, so things that I'm passionate about. Mental health is definitely one of those things for me, so being able to talk out about these issues and feel like I'm making some sort of change or starting a conversation is definitely a big part of it as well.
Mm-hmm. And then what would you say, like on campus, or kind of like, other than obviously the counseling center, like maybe like the massageathon, things like that, what are like kind of like the biggest things, kind of like advocating and opening that discussion up about mental health on campus for students?
Well, I think I know we at the counseling center try to, come to everything we're invited to, which outreach as much as we can are asked to, in terms of having those avenues be available in the classroom sometimes, at these events and the residence halls. Like I said, campus ministry can be a big resource, but finding those trusted kind of advisors or people on campus, if it's not somebody in the counseling center that you connect with. So I think it's just kind of being aware of everything that's going on and trying to attend some of those things.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And a lot of people find support through friends or others who advocate. And so if you are struggling and if you're able to share about it and if you're able to put it out there, it's definitely an easy way to start a conversation, because you never know who around you is also struggling.
Great. Well, thank you both so much. I appreciate that you guys took the time to come out here and share your thoughts, beliefs, and kind of just all this information so students can get help on campus. So thank you so much.
Thanks for inviting us.
So now we're going to learn, give them a round of applause. Now we're going to learn about a hard-working group of people on campus, the theater department. So let's watch a video to see how they make this campus their home.
Many have witnessed Marquette Theater's hard work come to life on stage, but few have seen all the work the students put in behind the scenes. It takes a lot of effort. Stage manager Kelsey Harlow gives us a look into how much love and care she puts into the production.
So for rehearsals, it's running about 5 hours a day, so about like 30 to 40 hours a week. Tech week, it's more like 80 to 90 hours a week. And shows are like 25, 30 hours a week.
The actors put in hard work too. The time they spend on the show starts to make the theater feel like home. Cast member Katie Dickey talks about her feelings towards the cast and crew.
I loved the cast for this show. We became such a big family, and it's really cool to work with a bunch of different people. I worked with a lot of people who I don't normally work with. Obviously, there are some people that are overlapping in different shows that I was in with them, but it was really, really fun to work with new people and a new director. Kind of cool to just see how everybody else functions and works, which is pretty cool, yeah.
Assistant stage manager Pia Russo shares her thoughts on the work process.
I really like the collaborative effort of that.
I think this show was really good at being collaborative. I like when things fall into place. So I like when the director is able to communicate something and the actor is able to understand what that means and the stage manager knows what they have to do. Like the end of Act 1 in the show is crazy. But it's really nice to sort of have everything work like clockwork. Actors come in and they come out and they, like, everything just falls into place really well.
Cast member Emma Knott says she feels at home because of the community.
I think that the people here are like really awesome. I think that especially during the show is really fun because it's a very like ensemble based show. So we were always like working together to do different things, and it's a very fun show too. So we just like, I don't know, we would like go out to get dinner after the show and little stuff like that. That just like is really fun, and it's a chill environment. While also being intense in the workload. So like I think that like that aspect of just like the chill people and nice people like is really good, especially if you're doing such intense like rehearsals and stuff. So yeah.
For Marquette Wire Arts and Entertainment, I'm Kendra Bao.
Make sure you watch out for upcoming shows so you can support the theater department. Now we have a panel with 4 students and an administrator. So we have Amina Beg, Brianna Flowers, Alfonso Martinez, Linnea Stanton, and Acting Provost Kimo Ayun. Hello everyone, thank you for joining us. So they're going to be discussing Marquette and kind of its impact on the community. So I have a bunch of questions here for you guys, and if at any point you feel like you have an answer, please feel free to just answer it. And if you want to make a comment on somebody else's answer, please feel free. All right, so my first question is, what do you think Marquette can do to help the homeless community? And anyone can start.
I think like we can actually understand that the homeless community in Marquette is actually a part of Marquette. Mm-hmm. A lot of times that we kind of brush them off and put them to the side, but we have to understand like when we decided to come to Marquette, that should be accepted as well. The whole Marquette, and if the homeless community sits in a part of it, then we have to, you know, accommodate to them as well, and not just treat them like, you know, I don't know, like they don't exist almost, or if they do exist in a bad manner, treat them in a bad manner.
Yeah, my first experience, like when I started thinking about homelessness was last year when the homeless man died across 19th Street, across Mashuda Hall, because I lived in Mashuda Hall last year. And so like I opened my blinds in the morning and the ambulance and police were right in front of the building. And I was just thinking about how the only thing that happened was that we got a text from MUPD, and then that's it. And then we never knew what else happened after. I had to do my own research to figure out what happened with the man, and like obviously where was he from and what his name was even. And so I think a lot of that comes from a lack of communication with the students, because sometimes I feel like they don't feel the need to communicate that what's going on to us, and being transparent I feel like gives a lot more, helps a lot more for us to understand what's going on.
And when you think about Marquette, they put a flag in the ground to be part of the city. And they need to continue their commitment. When we think about, we need to make sure we continue what we're doing now. We work with over 100 groups that are trying to address homelessness in Milwaukee. We think about our students through various Midnight Run, Project Homeless Connect. Our students, about 8,500 hours a year is what our students volunteer for, to make sure there's employment transition, access to health care, shelter, food, someone to talk about their spiritual needs. So I think it's just Marquette has to continue to remain committed and be in the community and work with Milwaukee, who is constantly finding better ways to address the problem. We know we have a long way to go.
I think also there's a lot we can do as students to destigmatize how we view people who are living without shelter. I think a lot of it sort of stems down to like, you know, check your friends who are making inappropriate comments about people you see on the street. Like we've all seen it happen. We've all, you know, like seen just, I think, like instances of inappropriate jokes being made, and I think just really checking your peers and checking the community and reminding them that people who are living without shelter are also people, and they are on this campus and they are a part of this community as much as anyone else is, and really destigmatizing why people are living homeless in the first place and sort of how people get to that situation is really important to understanding and having a lot more empathy when it comes to talking about populations who are living without shelter.
Yeah, to add on to that point, I think it's really important for the students to create a culture of inclusivity, especially with the topic of events and event planning. One of the events I'm really happy to carry on as part of my fraternity is Fiesta de Noche. And it was nice being able to provide food for the community, anyone who would just walk up. And it was an amazing experience to be able to welcome people from the street that would just come up and ask for food. And it was something that I thought was great. And it was something that a lot of people learned from being, to be inclusive. And a lot of people learn how to navigate those circles. And I think it's something that if we can keep each other accountable, it would make a great experience for Marquette and also a great experience for our community.
Mm-hmm. And then kind of moving on to that, how do you think these Jesuit values that Father Kroll had mentioned earlier, how do they play a role kind of like in your everyday lives or things with like fraternities or groups that you guys are a part of?
I think I can start off with that. Yeah. Especially with my fraternity, we're very service-oriented, very community-based. I believe that we always really try to uplift one another and also uplift the people around us. And that comes through doing a lot of volunteering, working on different events where we not only help others, but help build others as well. With having like resume workshops, LinkedIn workshops. I think it's important to be able to help establish a person to the point where they can have their own income, be able to interview, know how to network. And it's something that I feel every person from the ground up can learn. And it's always something that is very influential, very, it's a privilege to have, and it's a privilege to be able to give that knowledge to someone else. And it's something that I want to be able to keep going in my own fraternity and be able to affect Marquette in the way we have been.
I think a big thing for me is the service piece and then the faith piece, because a lot of times at Marquette, like, you do see things that you want to change, you know, and I think that because we're a Jesuit institution, it says we have to do it. Sometimes it's like on the students, I would say. A lot of times it's on the students to kind of enact the change. And I think that Marquette does have like a lot of resources that no one knows about, that we can utilize more, which I'm learning more on my own because it is a Jesuit school, like in the Peacemaking Center. The Center for Peacemaking, they have like different programs you can join to kind of start like your own service project, which I think is cool. And then there's different things that President Lovell's office does that no one knows about. But it's only like if you actually get so upset, like me personally, I got so upset with the way that we were handling the homeless population and, you know, handling low-income families in Milwaukee that it made me want to start a nonprofit. And I was able to learn from the Center for Peacemaking, talking with Mr. Bergen, Dan Bergen, about a bunch of things I was like, I was mad at, and then going into like the, with different people, just people on campus like Miss Sasha Parsons-Waters, who's helped me a lot in the 707 hub through WIN, just kind of empowering me to be able to go be the change that I want to see, because sometimes if you don't do it, then it just won't get done. So I think that Marquette's, like the Jesuits' values have like empowered me to say like I have to go do something.
Yeah, I think service is a really big thing, and I really like how Marquette phrases it, where they say we do service truly entering into the struggle of the people that we help. And so I feel like it goes beyond than just like going and volunteering one day on a random day in a month, but like actually understanding these people's problems and doing your own research about what they're going through and then becoming passionate about what they're passionate about. So then you can truly understand what they're facing and the conflicts that they're facing, because then it will allow us to seem like we're coming from a very more authentic place than like just a random Saturday we'll go and volunteer for the sake of volunteering.
Yeah, going off of that, so a lot of the work that I do on campus and sort of in the community in general is gun violence prevention work, and I think I see like a lot of the Jesuit values in the work that we're doing there because I think Marquette really emphasizes like being men and women for others, and when I'm doing work and talking about gun violence, I think it's really, really important to center the people who are being impacted the most and people who are more likely to be impacted by gun violence and who are like disproportionately impacted by it. So sort of going off of what you were saying, it is important to really relationship build in order to get that work done and not just show up for people on one random Saturday and like really think that you're going to make the difference, but actually going into communities, listening to what they need, sitting on it, reading about it, like talking to your friends, building those relationships, and then starting to do the work is really, I think, something that the Jesuit mission like embodies, and we all try to carry with our work for sure.
Yeah, and what I hear on the stage is exactly what I would expect to hear from students who are attending Marquette. We talk about men and women for and with others, and you know what I find is that mostly administration needs to just stay out of the way of students. So they are doing great programming, they want to be part of the community, and they want to make sure that they're part of that walk. And really walk along and understand the struggles that other people are going through. And not what the idea is, I'm the savior to come in and fix your life, but I'm here to walk with you and understand your life, and so that we can share and be in community together. And I think if I take it even a step further than that, I get the great pleasure each month of being able to spend time with the Jesuits and the residents, and in fact, I'm having lunch with them tomorrow. And I often ask them, what is the most important thing as administrators we need to be thinking about and doing? And the number one thing is pray every day. And so I think that's important from a principal, is to help us, to ground us. And then really think about how we think about our actions and how do we discern truly. And so before any important decision, and I see our students doing this, and I know President Lovell and I do it as well, it's really pausing, discerning what you're being asked to do, and then acting it only after you've given it time to really settle in.
And then what do you kind of think that students, obviously you guys are all students and then you are an administrator, what do we need kind of to succeed, not only at Marquette, but like beyond Marquette as well?
We need resources that matter. Like sometimes we invest into things that have no purpose, and I feel like if we invest into like student issues and student problems, like if a student is saying, hey, there's something that needs to be done in this area, let's not say, well, we're doing this, this, and that. Let's actually go take care of that area that needs to get fixed right away, because we are, just a walking advertisement for Marquette. And I feel like what we need most of the time is good leadership as well in roles for people who can listen to what we're saying and then act and say, hey, this is what we're doing. Sometimes Marquette does things that you never know about because it just never comes back out. And I think we do need more transparency. And on top of that, we just need people in roles who, like, you can just go talk to. Sometimes administration and faculty and staff, they're kind of standoffish, but just say, like, hey, just like mentors and leaders on campus that you can have those conversations with and say, hey, in this area, this is something I feel like I want to do. Marquette really doesn't offer it or promote it that much. How can I get more involved there? Or just things to like not help you only in education but also in life, because it's 4 to 5 years is growing young people into adults, and when we leave we're supposed to be able to go into the world and function in a good way. Sometimes if it's just on the educational manner that we're only learning and growing, then that stunts the development of young people at Marquette, and they kind of leave feeling like lost. Which I think, so what we do, to answer that, what we do need is just more people and resources to help students get like further in life and not just only through their education.
Yeah, going off of that, I feel like really what students need is like resources that make them feel safe, secure, and comfortable. Like a lot of the times we're already so concerned about keeping up with our academics and making sure we have good grades that we shouldn't have to also put in the effort to make sure our spaces are comfortable. And so just doing things like being transparent, like you said, and like a lot of the times we don't even know what's going on with Marquette, and then things are changing and we don't know why. And so like last week I was walking in Johnson Hall to my class, and there was just police that were swarmed around in Johnson Hall, and I had no idea why. And they were watching the stairs as if something was going to happen, and I was scared to go up to my class, and I was like, why am I scared to go to my class in Johnson Hall? And just like knowing why those police were there, or just like the recent missing student case where like a lot of it was not legitimate, they didn't make it legitimate, and so I was like feeling uneasy because the student was missing and he was directly connected to Marquette, and we didn't know anything about that was going on. Like a lot of the work that made the case public was from the students and not from the administration or MUPD, and so just making people feel secure emotionally and physically on campus, I feel like is what we need to be better.
I can go on next. I think one of the most important things to ask yourself is like, what are the needs of every student, especially coming from a first generation underrepresented student background. One of the biggest things that I know I need and people similar to me need are mentors. People who look like you, who have experienced the same things you have, and who can help guide you on that path to that self-fulfillment and to be able to navigate those areas. For example, this week I had held through MUSG a minority professional panel, where people did get to see different professionals from different areas, including business, medicine, the list goes on. And it fostered a really great network and a really great connection for most of the students there, where they were able to just hear the experiences of other professionals and hear what they had to go through and what it meant to be in the workforce after graduation, and also what things they brought from their education further on. And it was a great way to be able to connect these students to possible mentors, to possible leaders in their life that could help not only bring them opportunities, but bring them also a new way of thinking, a new perspective, and to help empower and embolden them as students.
I think another thing that, like just sort of going off of the idea of resources, what I think about, so I'm a political science and a gender and sexualities major. The political science department has one floor on this entire university. Like we have one, it's on the 5th floor of like Ware Physics. We have like a Ware Physics building, we have life sciences, we have chem, we have all of these things. The gender and sexualities like major has one office that has been closed this entire year. You know, so I think when I think about finding a home on Marquette's campus and what does finding home mean to me, I think about the resources and like the mentors that I have through both my non-academic life, but my academic life as well. And I definitely think that is prioritized for some majors, and I think it's prioritized for some groups on campus, but definitely not all, you know. And I think if we're talking about equity in resources, we also need to be thinking about what does equity look like for, you know, like the entire, like arts and sciences in general, or like all of the smaller majors or minors within arts and sciences or college of education that don't necessarily have like a nursing, like an entire nursing hall or like an entire business hall or something like that, you know, because a lot of where people find community is through people who are studying the same stuff as them or professors that are working on the same topics as them, and I think that's definitely a resource that is invaluable to students.
You know, when I think about where we need to head, I mean, at the base level, we need to make sure we have the right facilities and the right faculty in place to be able to help our students. So that's where we start. And then we think about who we are as an institution, a Catholic Jesuit institution. How do we make sure spiritual formation is also an important element of what we do here? I get to spend time with people who graduated from Marquette 40, 50, 60, 70 years ago. And when I ask them, what is it about Marquette that was so influential, because these are people who are really committed, they talk about providing kind of an ethical compass. They talk about providing a sense of understanding core values, and that's something that they've held for their entire life. You think about students come to us after 18 years. They're at Marquette for typically about 4 years, and then they go and live another life of 60, 70, 80 years past that. So we get this really small window where we're trying to make as large of impact possible, and it really is about home and community and figuring out how do we best manage, the resources. Where I sit, one of the things I think about is student debt and what students pay for tuition. And so, how do we manage that? How do we keep student tuition down as low as possible, but yet at the same time be able to provide the best faculty and the best spaces? And sometimes that becomes a very difficult balancing act, but I think it's about us finding those right balances for our students.
Yeah, and then for the four of you, since you are students and obviously do go through the student experience, my question for you guys is kind of like, what can Marquette do to make that experience better? And then for you, Chemo, like, what is Marquette doing to make the student experience better? And then any of you can start.
More diversity in every building, in every space. Like, it gets kind of tiring to go seek people who look like you, whether it be administration or just students in general. Like, it is tiring. I do think we also need to, when you say like tuition, like give us a heads up before it gets raised, things like that. Like just need-based things, more scholarship opportunities, more opportunities to network. Like he's a student putting on networking events, like more opportunities to meet the alumni that you speak of, because we only see them during homecoming. Maybe have them like come in more. I know you can't really make them do it, but kind of invite them back to different events, things like that, so we can kind of see where we'll be, hopefully, in the next 4 or 5 years, or 18 years, like you said. Just more, I think really, like you said earlier, just more mentorship and more people who look like you being those mentors and being in those spaces.
And then we are kind of running out of time, so if each of you just want to say like one thing that you think the campus can do to be better or is doing to make it better.
I feel like as a minority on campus, I feel like I've had to accept a lot of things and make them feel comfortable out of necessity, not just because they're actually comfortable for me. And so, like, that's anywhere from meal plans, I'm paying $4,000 for food I don't even eat, or just for, like, giving more diversity in our Theo classes. If you're requiring me to take 6 credits of Theo, I should be able to pick out of more diversity from that. And just also informing people in leadership roles and professors about ways they can deal with students and issues that they face. I should feel like if a professor is doing something that I do not like, I should feel open to report about that professor and feel like I have the impact to actually do something about it, instead of just having to sit in their class for another semester and letting them go on without actually having some kind of change.
Yeah, I would say that one of the most important things could be understanding. Just having the school understand that as a student you have to struggle through a lot of different obstacles. Going to class is not the only thing you do every day. Everybody has a lot of different things they juggle at once, and some people have more than others. And I guess being able to have understanding faculty, staff, and professors that will not necessarily tailor your education, but help empower you and help mentor you through that, to be able to help you reach the success that every student wants.
I'll make it short. Listening to students, making it easier for students to express their concerns, and also uplifting the voices of students who are underrepresented on campus.
I'm a first-generation college student. Diversity, equity, inclusion, and access has been important to me. We put in hiring practices and also outreach to students. We are very happy to say, when we know we have a long way to go still, but Marquette with its student body is the most diverse it has been in the history of Marquette. We have the first and the second most diverse classes. First-year class is currently in the first and the third-year courses at Marquette. Marquette faculty are also tenure track, our most diverse it has been in the history of Marquette, 20% currently. And we have a program that we support that is bringing in additional, we'll hire 9 more faculty to bring in greater diversity into Marquette. It's us over a long period of time continuing those. We also know that We need to continue to work on the climate. We're having a climate study that we're going to do in February to see where we are, but how do we reach students and how do we make people feel more comfortable at Marquette? And that's the job that administration has to continue to do, working with students.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for sharing your thoughts and perspectives on how we can make Marquette a better home. Before we end, it is time for the Q&A segment. So if you do have a question, please walk up to one of the mics, state your name, and remember to be respectful to the panel members.
Selfish with the microphone stuff.
Go ahead.
I feel like I failed in one thing I said, but everybody up here made a comment about it that it blew me away, so I wanted to jump on it, especially about homelessness. I mean, it says finding home on here. Housing ends homelessness. If you're in a homeless shelter, you're still homeless. So we need housing to end homelessness so people can find their way home. And the comments people were making were about how all of us in here have limited time and limited money. And what are we going to do with that? And so people were saying we need to have a strategy to make it work. Because in the short amount of time we might have to work with somebody, we need to be working on getting them home, getting our strategies on working on that, on the solution to these problems. And I'm asking, my question is, will people in the room join us, follow up with us? Because we're going to keep doing this every day. And we're not just talking about it, we work on it every day. Jeff will be there with me. You're all invited. So I'd like to share all this. I'm not even going to accept no, I guess. I asked yes. Yeah, you have to help us. Because people can't, like, oh man, the government, like I said before, isn't funding it to what we need. And housing is what ends this issue. So please, let's do it. So that's all.
Hi, so, sorry, I'm Matt Martinez, I'm with The Wire. I kind of wanted to ask everybody up here, we've talked a lot about kind of how home and the feeling of home impacts this campus, and I know a lot of people have a general concern about what is referred to as the Marquette bubble, which is basically that campus is in one part of Milwaukee and then everything outside of it is a completely different part of Milwaukee, basically, in the eyes of students. What do you guys think we should be doing to kind of try and counteract that or kind of try to open up a little bit more to the outer community that is around Marquette?
I'm from the city, so I think like one thing that we can do is just like enhance the amount of places the limo goes, because I know like they like attribute to the bubble a lot. So kind of just like extending the radius would get people into more places, and they feel like they can go. I feel like the limo is kind of like this is where you stop and end. So the limo, just extending the radius would, just help people get out more. Feels like Milwaukee welcomes Marquette, but Marquette doesn't welcome Milwaukee. And so I feel like by like students and everyone just supporting local businesses, and a lot of times also like if administrators can give more opportunities for people like in these Milwaukee neighborhoods for job opportunities and like allow those jobs to have the opportunity to grow in those jobs, I feel like it will expand it more to than just what we are here. And yeah.
I would love to see a lot more like student planned events off campus. A lot of times we do stuff on campus, which is great, but it would be really cool to do stuff off campus, and it would also be really great to, provide the transportation to go to those events, because sometimes transportation is definitely inaccessible. And I think just breaking the bubble in general, like if you need to, start with food. I made a list, like when I got here as a freshman, I made a list of all of the coffee shops in Milwaukee, and I'm trying to slowly hit all of them, because in doing that, I'm really forcing myself to get out of the bubble and seeing other parts of the community in just like very simple ways. And it's taken me to parts of Milwaukee that I know that I never would have gone to before, and it's been really lovely.
I wanted to say that was an awesome question, because especially coming from Milwaukee myself as well. I grew up in the north side, and I currently live in the south side of Milwaukee. I think one of the first things that Marquette has to do is to stop creating this vision of everything around Milwaukee as dangerous, or the near areas as dangerous. Especially just coming from these neighborhoods, it really feels like I'm in a state of trouble where I don't know how to actually see my own neighborhood, because like when I'm here at Marquette, it's like we're pushed to view as not being safe around these neighborhoods or not being safe around these people. And I feel like that is really contrary to our vision of inclusivity that Marquette is supposed to have. The whole idea behind it is that sure, there's things that are important about being safe, but not rather creating this image of you're in danger whenever you're outside of Marquette. To be able to foster the initial steps towards being able to go off campus, not feeling like you're going to get robbed, or not feeling like you're at danger for something happening, but rather feeling like, hey, I'm exploring something new. I'm exploring a culture that I haven't necessarily been open to yet, and it creates almost a sense of this discovery, and I think that's something that Marquette can really do to fix that.
Yeah, I agree. Getting more out into the community, students, faculty, events in the community. I think president level scaling wellness in Milwaukee is a really good start about how we think about trauma and how we have conversations with people in the community about how we move forward as an entire city.
Thank you.
Yes, wanting to acknowledge all of you for doing a lot in this event to try to create more communication, a lot of involvement in the community, the larger community. Just a real privilege to witness this and to have a chance to invite Marquette to become involved in this organization that I represent, which is somewhat of a well-kept secret, except for Campus Ministries, who has been with us for 3 of the 5 years. We began 5 years ago with nothing at all, just the name of the organization, the licensing, the vision, nothing. No people, no resources. We're in the epicenter of poverty in Wisconsin at 24th and Center in the 53206 zip code. We have the regular participation of campus ministry, and those students are so enthralled with the experience of being with us that they even come back, even after the year is done, to come back and visit. We are more than just an agency, we are a community, and it's mainly comprised of the people of that neighborhood or formerly homeless people. This is the McKenna Brown Homeless Sanctuary, and we are growing. We now own our own building debt-free. We have construction going on first floor to create a daytime sanctuary, refuge and resource center, and then on cold nights to be an emergency warming room. The second floor will be medical. The third floor will be aquaponics, thanks to MSOE. The fourth floor will be employment, and the fifth floor will be a unity floor. We are a community center, not just a social service agency, and our arms are open. Our hearts are ready to be open to Marquette students who have their hearts open for homeless and at-risk homeless people. So if you want to find out more, the website is www.mbsanctuary.org. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Hey guys, I'm Shane. I'm also with The Wire. Linnea, I did a package on your work, shameless plug, last year. Can you give us a little more insight and how students can get involved? Because it's some awesome stuff.
Yeah, where do I even start? So I work with an organization called March for Our Lives, which is a gun violence prevention organization, and we just recently started a chapter on campus. So if you're interested, come find me after the panel and you can get involved. But so last year, one of the things that we did that Shane is referring to is we had a few hundred shirts with like a flag on it that had a QR code, and when you scanned the QR code, it took you to a link to register to vote. So that was sort of like a big community building event that we did in getting students registered to vote and talking about these issues. And I think I don't know what you wanted me to say, but I think bringing this, I think sort of bringing us around to the conversation about like what does finding home look like in Marquette and what does finding home look like in Milwaukee. It's I do work with gun violence every single day, and it's really important to understand how does gun violence specifically impact Marquette's community, how does it impact the people in Milwaukee, how does it impact Wisconsin, because even though it is one topic, like that issue individually affects all three communities very differently. And I think it's important to sort of start having that conversation with folks on campus. And so we did just recently start a chapter, thanks for the plug, I guess, to sort of bring that conversation about gun violence in Milwaukee to the Marquette's campus, to talk about ways that we can alleviate it and ways that it can be prevented in general.
Hi, my name is Allie, and first of all, Linnea, right? Okay, I just want to say that I appreciated what you brought up earlier about the different colleges and like having, yeah, exactly. Okay.
Right.
My question is for Kima. I guess, so I work for the Center for Community Service, and I was wondering by your comment about having the administration like take a step back, like does that encourage students to then not continue their involvement in service or in the community in their like adult career?
I'm not sure what your question is.
Earlier, did you say that the role for administration in service is taking a step back?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. What I was saying is we just need to stay out of the way. So when we stay out of the way, students do good work and are out into the community. So more so I was saying is we shouldn't be in the way of students doing the service that they're doing. So we're not stepping back at all. And in fact, if anything, we would be more committed to it.
So as administrators, or just like staff and faculty at Marquette, like it's so important to be involved in service, like not being a student, right?
Absolutely, absolutely, yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, in fact, I'll be doing some service work with the president next week. And so we continue to find ways that we might as connect as well. Sure.
Hi, my name is Sydney, and my question is for Brianna, actually. I know you mentioned starting your own nonprofit, and I was just wondering if you could maybe share for interested students how they can kind of take similar steps as you if they want to be the change that they want to see, like you mentioned earlier.
I think like the first thing is finding something you're passionate about, like an issue you're passionate about. Like I'm from the north side of Milwaukee too, so like I see like, and I hear and I read it all over like these Twitter posts and what's the new app, like the wildfire thing and all this stuff just about like, oh, it's so dangerous and just talking bad about my community and where I grew up and stuff like that and the people who look like me and things. So I was just very upset, and I think once you find something that it really puts you like down, like you have to be, not really, but it put me really down in a really bad space, and I wanted to kind of change the narrative. So I just decided to find something I was very passionate about, and I started talking to my friends about it, and that's just really how it started. Started talking to my friends, like, I'm just irritated, like, Marquette's not doing anything, we're not doing anything, we're just sitting here, and people are starving, they're freezing to death. It was during the polar vortex, really. It was saying that it was coming, and we kept hearing the polar vortex is coming, the polar vortex is coming, and there was still nothing being done, and my friend was like, you know what, we gotta do something, so I just put up like $300 of my own money, and my friends just started putting in money, and we just started getting like donations and stuff to like start making baskets for low-income families in the city to give them out. And then it just kind of spiraled more. Like I know technology is growing, and someone I really look up to is like very technology-based, and he was like, you have to start teaching students, like these young people in high school, is how to code. So I started learning how to code. My little brother learns how to code, and that's something that I really want to implement, is like just having a center. Something I'm probably trying to do this summer is just teaching students how to code, like free classes. And I guess the best step to kind of get to where you want to be is a lot of planning goes into it. And then networking. Like I used to be like a very vocal person, but I had to become more vocal to get what I wanted and what I needed for my organization. And it really opened a lot of doors for me just being at Marquette because of people like Dan Bergen, people like Sasha Parsons-Waters, who just helped me kind of navigate the system and try to get through the system the right way. And I feel like once you're very passionate and you can see the change that's happening, and you see the change that's not happening even more, it makes you want to change it. So I think that's the first thing, like just being very passionate, a lot of planning. You have to be like networking a lot. Even if you don't like it, you have to network. You have to budget a lot of things. Something I also wasn't too good at was budgeting. So budget, planning, just being very passionate, and don't take no for an answer. Like you'll get a lot of no's when you're first starting a nonprofit, because you're basically asking people to donate stuff for free, pretty much. So you get a lot of no's. I can't right now, or I've already donated to this organization or this charity. We'll say like, okay, well next year, you know, and then people remember that. You say, okay, thank you, next year. So when you get to talk to them this year, we have 25 food baskets already pre-made. So things like that, just say like, hey, next year. Just be very consistent and persistent. And yeah, that's just the best way. I don't know if it's like a good answer or not, but just be very passionate about what you're doing too.
Hi, my name is Sabrina. I am the Vice President of Students for Sea Literacy here on Marquette's campus. The organization is basically we bring high school students from Milwaukee Public Schools who are refugees and have escaped conflict for tutoring services here, but also mentorship. And my question is kind of going back to something Brianna said earlier about tuition. And we have a lot of our students who we encourage them to apply to colleges, and even though they're from Marquette, like the Milwaukee community, they don't apply to Marquette because they think it's too expensive, the tuition is too high here. And I just was like wondering, it's going to open to anybody, but like what is Marquette's like commitment to the community in that sense about making sure that Marquette's accessible for all types of different students here, especially from Milwaukee Public Schools?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess I can start it. You know, obviously one of the things we look at is our discount rate, and we different groups. We really kind of focused on diverse groups. Think about our EOP program, but even beyond our EOP program, that we're constantly trying to figure out is how do we balance to be able to give the maximum amount of tuition discount to those people who need more discount, but by making sure that we then also have enough money to be able to develop our spaces and to hire the right faculty. As we go through the EOP 50th anniversary, we've been talking about how might we specifically make a commitment to, a greater commitment to the Milwaukee County and that area, and we're talking about that specifically as might there be something where we can divert more of our discount to be able to give more to the community. So I would say is that is something we're constantly looking at, and that's one of the things that we want to do. You know, one of the things that we find is, however, is, you know, there are a lot of the Milwaukee students, they want to go away, right? And that's why we have this kind of exchange with Chicago. It's some people want to go, they want to go far enough away from home that they can get back, but not right in their backyard.
And then I'm sorry if I cut anybody off. If you want to talk to any of the panelists after the forum, please feel free. But that, unfortunately, is all the time that we have for the Q&A session. I just want to say thank you to all of our guests, all of you that came tonight, and our performer. We truly appreciate you coming out and sharing your perspectives and insights with all of us on these topics. It means a lot. And to our audience, we truly appreciate you taking the time to come to the forum tonight. I know it's kind of a rainy, cold day, so I really appreciate you guys coming to watch us tonight. And if you would like more coverage on any of the topics that we had tonight, feel free to go to marquettewire.org, and we do have Marquette journals outside that you can take on your way out. We hope that this opened up a discussion about the place that we call home. Once again, I'm Alex Rivera-Grant, and have a great night. Thank you. Yeah, that's it. We're all good. Thank you, guys.